I'm John Butensky, and you're listening to Nack Goes to the Movies, the one-stop shop podcast for all things movies, TV, and pop culture.
Turns out he's a major cinephile. They don't watch enough movies! It's a very simple formula! And here we go. Welcome to the show. I still live for movies and TV, and you can continue to live vicariously through me. Or we can be on this journey together. We are at over 500 downloads and on to episode 13 right now. And happy Halloween, everybody. And you thought we were done with the slasher genre, didn't ya? Ha! Joke's on you. We won't always be talking these. We will get a seasonal break soon. But this is who I am, and it's my truth. Cheesy, spooky movies. And you knew that we were doing Halloween. I told ya. The deep dive. Here it is. And eventually we will answer the final burning question. Which is better, Halloween or Friday the 13th? If you have not already, I recommend you listen to the Friday the 13th episode before this, episode 11, for reference. Sadly, most of these films in both these franchises have to be individually rented and paid for unrelated to a streaming service. I think I saw Jason Lives Part 6 for free on Prime, and I think very highly of that. So that's something at least. But I own most of these, except for the really, really bad ones. Halloween is also, I just saw, apparently available on the Roku channel. If you have that, get after it. Before we get into this, I want to do two quick things that were exciting news things to me. Breaking news, right? At the time of recording this, Netflix just announced a live adaptation of Assassin's Creed, which I'm very excited for. I love those games. It's when I get a PS5 or whatever, I'll have like 4 or 5 Assassin's Creed games to catch up on, which would be very exciting if a live action can be good. I don't remember the movie being particularly amazing, but I love the game, want to be optimistic, and they're doing a live action Resident Evil, so if they can both be good, Netflix, some video game adaptations for the win, that would be pretty exciting. This could be the future, right? We got an Uncharted movie coming out. Apparently, Mark Wahlberg's character will have a mustache for Sully, which is important. Tom Holland looked-ish the part, so this could be the year of good video adaptations, video game adaptations, that is. And also, who else is excited for all these Justice League reshoot casting news? Jared Leto's coming. Joe Manganiello, who we said on this podcast, I didn't think we were ever going to see his Deathstroke. Apparently, they're both coming in for reshoots to make this 4-hour TV masterpiece series of HBO Max, which is great. I want the full movie as soon as possible to own it, but in any way I can see this, very excited for that opportunity. And who knows, maybe Jared Leto being back, we get our air cut for Suicide Squad with him in it like he should have been, like the trailers hinted at. So fingers crossed. But now let's get on with the show. So the original Halloween, we have to call it the 1978 because there are technically 3 movies with that title. First of all, the theme is great. You can't always compare to Friday the 13th, but this song slaps. That's why I have 3 remixes of it on my iPhone, thanks to the Trip or Treat a Halloween remix tape. The beginning is a masterpiece. It didn't create the POV killer shot, but it definitely popularized it more so. And the POV of young Michael going after his sister for we don't really know why, it's kind of great with the we don't know why it's happening, we don't know who is the killer, and the reveal of seeing who it is. Beautifully artistically done. This movie definitely is older and can show its age at times, but it does not have to be over the top gory to be good. I mean, I think that's one of the reasons people really like Friday the 13th, because it's so much, you see so much visceral action, even if it is a little goofy. And Halloween at times tends to be a bit more muted with some of its kills, and the first one instead really decides to go for an unnerving feel and vibe to it and make it really spooky, more so than, you know, maybe hitting you over the head with the gore hammer like Friday the 13th does. Don't we love Jamie Lee Curtis? Yes, you may know her from Freaky Friday. That was my first experience of Jamie Lee Curtis, but she's actually had a bit of a resurgence recently with being on the latest season of Archer, being in the very good film Knives Out, and apparently we are getting a season 3 of Scream Queens. Fingers crossed. Although words make it seem like it's happening, but I'll believe it when I see it, kind of thing. And of course we have Donald Pleasance, one of my favorite parts of this franchise for sure, because he's actually almost at times, once, pre-reboot, probably more so the face of the franchise than Jamie Lee Curtis is. And you may know him from the James Bond film, You Only Live Twice. So this is a theme, especially in some of the earlier ones, but like kid bullying was like bad in the 70s, just shouting boogeyman at kids. Like that's the whole thing they did. I guess they're trying to scare the little kids, but I don't know. I I just remember watching the stats and be like, huh, that's all it took in the 70s. Interesting. Kids are way worse now with bullying. Kids are the worst, aren't they? And I think last episode I went on a few quote tangents, and this one may be the same. Just thinking about, school, I always forget my book. Who even needs books? What a quote. What a mantra. Who knows? A few years from now, we may not even be using books anymore. I haven't shifted to the tablet reading yet, but, I'm sure that's the way things are going, which is tough. I like a good book in my hands. All the scenes with Michael driving are so tense and amazing. The movie kills it in these moments. Just seeing Michael in the daylight is so different from other horror movies. And we'll talk about this later, but this movie does kind of cement the fact that Michael's a little more like cerebral of a killer. And I can almost guarantee Jason doesn't know how to drive. I mean, we don't know how he got from Crystal Lake all the way to the final girl from the first movie to kill her in the beginning of the second one. But the assumption is he didn't drive because he does not look like the most intelligent of serial killers, where Michael has moments of seeing his intelligence, especially in the earlier films. I think the music cues here are also really good. Don't Fear the Reaper when Michael's telling them on the radio, and just the musical stings when you have to see if Michael's somewhere. You kind of, if you're watching but not like 110% engaged, you kind of like jolt up when you hear the thing like, okay, where is he? Kind of like almost Invisible Man, the reboot, kind of like that, but instead of having musical hints, you were always just kind of wondering, okay, is that him or is that just nothing and I'm just looking at things because it has that tenseness in it. Honestly, for as great as it's scaring you, it's not a movie with a ton of fatalities. Kind of goes to show that you don't have to be, crazy, bloody, gore central to be scary. I think having two kids for him to hide from kind of raises the stakes and elevates it a little more, because there's a little more tension with, a young kid scared of this thing as opposed to a bunch of teens who are kind of going to the murder camp the 7th time now. I do like that this movie kind of, I'm sure everyone's, Jamie Lee Curtis is the final girl, but I like how it builds up who Donald Pleasance is as a character, especially early on. I like his kind of, he smiles when, just like scaring some kids away. Like you kind of tell he has, he's not this gritty, worn man that we eventually see him in. He's, definitely suspicious and nervous about Michael being up and around, this area where he killed as a kid, but it's nice seeing him have these little joy moments when he can. Also, I know it's only one day before Halloween when this podcast is going out, but great Halloween costume idea ever. A sheet ghost, but with glasses. Like, you wonder if Michael and Jason both have this sense of humor when they're doing what they do. Like, their whole franchises are obviously both super macabre, and, you kind of wonder, obviously the glasses are from the other guy. Like, did he think, well, if I put these glasses on and wear a ghost sheet, she'll think I'm the guy I just killed? Like, you wonder if those machinations are percolating in the minds of our masked slashers 80 serial killers. We see Jason's face, but it's so briefly, so not to disillusion us or answer us. Who is Michael? Like, that's not the point. We don't want to see his face. And we actually see Jason's face quite a lot, interestingly, now that I'm thinking back about it. In like a lot of movies, the mask ends up being gone in some capacity, and sometimes the face reveal is better than others. I'm looking at you, Jason Goes to Manhattan, but I like that it kind of keeps it secret. Also, Donald Pleasance coming in hot is a great, like, quote end to it. Like, his character just becomes the trigger happy guy as it goes, and that's it. That's how the first movie ends. Absolutely love it. Phenomenal film. Halloween 2. Also, we have to preface this one, I believe, because there's another Halloween 2. So, Halloween 2, 1981. Mr. Sandman being in this at all boosts this movie up super high. I don't know if it's kind of, they can go, the boogeyman and, Mr. Sandman, sometimes they can go kind of hand in hand with the monster is around when you're sleeping, but I love my oldies music, and this, brilliant. And it comes a slight theme to the franchise. Not aggressively, but it's in there a little bit. I do love how you can easily watch 1 and 2 together and not miss a beat story-wise. It picks up right when the last one happens. Always love a vintage movie reference, by the way. So whenever they're watching something also in the horror genre, and I know what it is, Night of the Living Dead, just a nice little touch. I also like it's the first time they use the theme when it's not Michael Myers. They kind of trick you into what you had been thinking and knowing as rules of the franchise and turning that on their head a little bit. You like seeing just the chaos and reference to the first movie. It really feels like one long miniseries that you're just along for the ride on, especially in the early ones. Not that the other characters were crazy developed in the first movie, but I never really cared for about any of these hospital staff people. Jimmy is okay as a semi-nice guy, love interest, but just okay isn't really enough. And I kind of wish they did more with Lee Brackett, who's the sheriff in the first one, where, you know, part of the continuing storyline is he learns that his daughter is dead, and it may have been tough to have too many like angry guys running around looking for Michael, but the reboot had them both sideline Loomis a bit in the sequel in favor of Brackett, and it would have been nice to see a little more with that. This movie loves the fake trick scares at the sound hits, you know, and once again, that's something I really enjoyed, was just playing with the perceptions of what we thought were true and then they weren't true. You know, obviously Scream did it super differently in the first movie, but this is doing it within the same franchise, just one movie apart from the other one. And I think they went much harder with the kills in this one. The therapy tub one is brutal, especially for 1981. It kind of, when I think of things like that, it kind of reminded me a little bit of the like liquid nitrogen kill from Jason X, which was years after, and you know, technology and special effects had much improved, but just that I got that same vibe and feel from it, right? But I've always wondered, and it's happened the first, second, and third times I've seen this movie, how does he not burn his hand when submerging a girl under boiling water to drown her? Like, I always, from the first time I saw it, I was like, oh, that's weird, that's suspicious, that's weird. See, there's another TikTok reference if you're coming from TikTok land. But I just never got how, you know, like the dude hasn't got magic heat resistant hands, right? Like, just assuming, like, he can apparently live through things and keep getting shot and all that, but he's not like impervious to pain zombie man. So I never really understood how that happened. It always blew my mind. Also, they shoot this so well with Michael appearing from the shadows, like, so menacingly. Like, in a second, you see that grayish white face, and I think it's still red hair at the point. The hair, I feel like, changes a few times on the mask, but it's just shot so wonderfully. It's a cinematic marvel what they do to this stuff. When the nurse is seeing all the tires slashed, she goes back in the hospital. Like, just walk and keep on walking out the door. Channeling Keyshawn Johnson here, but come on, man. When Laurie finally sees Jason in the hospital, the moment is so good and so scary. The early Halloweens just like nailed the atmosphere. And if you ever make a Halloween like Michael's monologues, like he must be having the time of his life being all macabre and stuff. Like singing stuff he's making up, like I'm killing over here and I'm killing over here. Like he's just having a hoot with what he's doing. And we never get that internal monologue. It would be a comedy, but I would be curious. That's the kind of stuff they should have been looking at in his psychology with Loomis. That would have been interesting. I can't even say it with a straight face. It would be awful, but I'd be very curious what the thought is. I will say, he takes his sweet time, and Laurie would be done if he put, like, a little bit of effort and haste. I know that's the whole thing, right? The trope is the girl in skipping clothes is running, and she trips on a branch and twists her ankle and then kind of crawling, and because the other guy was walking, eventually he catches up, and that's the scary thing, is he's not just running after you, but, like, I don't know, if the guy could run too, that would be absolutely terrifying. Just throwing it out there. Think of like the zombies in Walking Dead versus the zombies in World War Z. They're just, one of those is going to be inherently scarier because it like sprints at you. That's scary stuff right there. Like, there's a part in this movie where Laurie gets in the elevator and she's closing the door and he's going, the door closes and he tries to like stab through a closed elevator door instead of using two hands to keep it open. Like, the movie would be done if he put a little bit of effort. I will say, and I know I watch these back to back, but I kind of forgot Marion was a character in the first place. The nurse from the first one is here as well. And I don't know, something just got, I honestly forgot about her character, and she does come back eventually in the reboot, and she also is going to come back in the new reboot. So first she was in the H2O franchise, and now she's going to be in the sequel to the 2018 Halloween as well. I also love these movies where Loomis just does whatever he wants. He's threatening random people and just shooting anything because he does not care, and his progression changes, but I like, he's kind of like the shoot first, ask questions later, but he's a psychiatrist, so who knows where it came from, but obviously he did fight Michael the first time, and this is more of that. And I will will say, and I honestly forgot about this when I watched the second movie to when I watched some of the later ones, but Michael just like walking through glass and, you know, just amazing, and eventually starts just walking through walls of sheetrock because he can do whatever he wants. The one thing I thought was a little silly is there's a part where, you know, Michael loses his vision and he's fighting Loomis mostly and Laurie, and like Loomis gets stabbed by him and it looks kind of bad. Like it just doesn't look good. And while that part's bad, the explosion that they have that Loomis causes is phenomenal. It's so over the top and it seems final. And obviously the weird thing, you know, as a fan in the time, which I was not, is, you know, you watch that and you like, okay, well, that's the end, you know, especially finding out that the third film in the franchise is unrelated to anything. So you probably could have thought, okay, we got our 2-part story of Michael and now we're on to this, whatever this is, Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. And boy, did I not like this movie. And, you know, once again, I'm coming into it watching the whole franchise and there's this one little ugly duckling that you're like, what is this thing that doesn't have Michael? And you know, here's my take on it, but I was not thrilled. It's tough to talk on it because you want to reinvent thing sometimes, since how can you keep a series interesting and good for so long? So I have to give him credit for trying to make an anthology series. And look, American Horror Story is an anthology series, and like while it kind of, you know, gives a little more chutzpah to certain stories, the Coven storyline, you know, clearly is touched on a few times and in theory is going to be touched on at least once more, but there's also some interconnectivity. The only reference here is I think they have the original Halloween on a TV in the world of Halloween 3, which, you know, whatever, right? Not for me. And this is probably the last good thing I'm going to say here. I bought my Halloween movies mostly separate, specifically so I don't have to get this piece of unrelated garbage with the rest of the franchise. This is trash. Like, same thing with Freddy vs. Jason. I could have got things in a set, did not feel the need to own Freddy vs. Jason. Just don't need it. So what is this? Well, for start, no Michael Myers, no Laurie Strode, no Dr. Loomis. I mean, bro, is this even a Halloween movie? Is it? I don't know. I don't think so. It's like a sci-fi, supernatural movie, not really a slasher at all, right? So pretty off the beaten path for the genre that was previously set by the first two. But we obviously know it's a completely different movie. But it shouldn't be called Halloween 3. Just my thought. So there are a bunch of men in suits who are trying to stop a guy from spoiling their toy factory mask plan. They stop him, but his daughter and this doctor, who I think is like, there's something wrong. I don't know if he's an alcoholic. And they're trying to figure out what is going on. But this town is pretty much all prospering because of the town that, you know, the mask company makes them all this money. The plot is, I think, or the grand scheme is these masks will make you turn into an insect after watching a Halloween special, but you have to wear the mask while you're watching the Halloween special. And there are lasers and suit men that are actually a bunch of androids. They get into the company, they break in, and we see it impact the whole viewing audience. So in theory, it looks like, oh, maybe the plan stopped. And then they blow a bunch of stuff up. Seemingly, you know, everything's good, even though the doctor is the only one who makes it, since the girl eventually is an android too. And he stops it, you know, on some channels, but then it keeps popping up on other ones. And the music is super annoying. It's like pop, 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 pop. And it's all the time this pop, 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 pop theme. It's awful. I just don't get what this is and why apparently it seemingly now has a cult following. Do you like it? Like, I'm genuinely curious. If anyone is really into this, please reach out on social, let me know. I have to know how some people can like this movie that I think is trash. And I like some bad movies. Do not get me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying the Sharknadoes are amazing cinematic masterpieces, but I enjoy them for what they are. But I don't get that. I don't see a single positive redeeming thing about Halloween 3. I don't get it. But thankfully, they realized the error of their ways and said, okay, we gotta go all in on Michael Myers. So Halloween 4, the return of Michael Myers. Clap, 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 circle, clap, clap all around, right? Very exciting stuff. Something about Michael jamming a finger in a guy's brain head early on is brutal. When they talk about the Insomniacs Hall of Fame, I feel like I lived there for the last 8, 9, 10 months. It's pretty much since quarantine. I feel like my sleep schedule is sort of all over the place. So, hey, this movie, pretty relatable for us people who don't sleep a whole heck of a lot. We have a new lead after having killed off Laurie off screen in Jamie, who's the daughter of Laurie. Writing out Laurie stinks because of logistics. You had to do it. You know, they went a different direction. She went a different direction. It all worked out in the end, though, don't worry. But sadly, here we are with 3 movies without Jamie Lee Curtis. Not great. The dream sequence here is amazing, probably because it brings a younger girl and her fear is scary, especially through her eyes. Like, Michael Myers is scary without a doubt, but with kids and their imaginations, it can be more visceral and scary. And I think some of the Michael scares in this movie are some of the best around. Holy cow, Loomis is alive. I love it, but like, how? He's one tough cookie, like a big burned cookie, like, wow, he took a hit, huh? The gas station confrontation where, Loomis almost kind of gives himself up to his fate against Michael. He's almost ready to be done and ended it right there. He does still pop off a few rounds because, at the end of the day, that is who he is, obviously. And he almost gets blown up and burned like super early. But I feel like he's not really in any danger. They're not going to bring him back for, the first quarter of the movie and then be done with him, right? Come on. Especially if you don't have Jamie Lee Curtis in this movie. So kid bullying has really upped their game in Halloween 4, and it's not good. Don't get me wrong, bullying is the worst. Remember, I've said kids are the worst. They know that her uncle is like a huge serial killer because Halloween 2, one of the big things is they made a familiar relationship with Jamie Lee Curtis, Laurie Strode, as well as Michael Myers. So they know her uncle is like this huge serial killer, and they just talk about her dead mom and her being an orphan. And this scene alone makes me really root for Jamie more than I was before, because kid bullying is the worst. And like, I didn't really know how I felt about Jamie to start, but like, it's interesting that, she's going through something similar that, we saw in the first Halloween with the kids that are being babysat. And look, man, kids suck. Stop bullying kids. Come on. I will say, when they're, picking out her Halloween costume, the clown duality is amazing, since young Jamie and young Michael, are in the mirror, and the Michael things are so good, since you never know if it's just Jamie seeing things or if Michael is really stalking her. And that's sort of the question that really percolates in your mind as a viewer. Seeing Rachel's boyfriend Brady with the other girl trick-or-treating, there's a sentiment that boys cheat and suck who aren't named Tommy or Loomis in this franchise. Different Tommy, not Tommy Jarvis. That may pop up a bit later as a theme that we notice. The drunk guys leaving the bar in their like militia-style trucks feels so right for this town, but so wild that it's happening. They may be a bit older of movies, but the dialogue just feels right in these movies, something that never feels true in the Rob Zombie ones, even if they are more modern. Also, this reminds me that Michael's like the worst, because the worst thing anyone can do in a movie, for me, is kill a cat or dog. I love animals, and, stop killing them. That's wrong, right? Come on. Which is why Marley and Me is the worst movie ever, and why you should never go on a date to see it. Not speaking from personal experience or anything, being surprised when the girl you're going on a date with picks it, not personal experience or anything. But, let's just move on. Don't try that Halloween-ish with me. The electrician is one of the bravest guys ever in this franchise. That's the quote he says. But he gets fried, which causes a new level of scary for the rest of the town. The movie has that blackout, limited vision. It's like in Among Us, right? When that imposter sabotages those lights, anything could happen. This movie also plays with the notion that people suck. Don't they always, right? And, it'll play with town tragedies with dumb teens dressing up as Michael after multiple killing sprees. I forgot which movie this was in. Having a bunch of Michaels surround Loomis and a cop, and, they got guns, and then, thankfully nothing happens in that moment, but kids suck. And they kind of make the same reference in Scream 4 of, kids, taking this tragedy and making it a joke. I combine tragedy and travesty. New word, tragedy. But I also like in this scene that even though all these, fake Michaels are there and they leave, the real Michael is like hidden among them, which is interesting. I also like the police like carnage that Michael shows, but I kind of wish we as an audience saw it, since most serial killers are not like the Terminator in these movies, and they have to stalk isolated people. They are not the Terminator as quoted by Noah Foster in the Scream TV series. We kind of are left to see the aftermath of it, but it's a whole show don't tell thing. And I guess they kind of did an interesting thing with like the Revenge of the Sith, where they showed the temple and all the younglings who were dead. They obviously were going to show him killing kids for obvious reasons, but they let you use your imagination in that scene. But it's doubled down when they show him killing off all the separatist leaders in that one room. But in this instance, they're adults. I would have liked to see it just to show how menacing of a figure he can be. Loomis's character arc is beautiful for me, especially as we get to 1, 2, and 4. It starts to deteriorate a little after this, but in this movie where he's just inciting a riot with the drunk mob dads. Like, he doesn't care about anything else except what he wants. And once again, we have another thing of Michael riding in a car. He's not driving this time, but, you know, he's not just going to kill everything he sees. He lays down in the back of the car and is riding around to, you know, get to where his ultimate goal is, which is to kill Jamie. Like, he's so clever and smart in some of these instances, and, you know, it's nice to see those little attention to detail hits to make him more than just a figure who kills people, but, like, there's a brain in there as well. I will say, the weird thing about this is, after all this time, the fact that some random teen who lives in this town does not know who Michael Myers is hilarious and a little bit unbelievable, in the same vein of, at a certain point, the kids in Friday the 13th know, okay, maybe don't go near that camp, the lake, any other properties around either of those things, just don't be there. Like, it's easy. And if you grow up in this town and don't know who Michael Myers is, like, after seemingly three different murder sprees, come on, figure it out, right? The school part is kind of extra and does not feel super important. I love more Loomis, but the school feels just like a way to bring Rachel back, give Loomis some FaceTime, and get the drunk guy caravan together with him. It's kind of almost just saying, okay, how do we get these parts here? Well, if we make everyone convene and have a little extra stalking chasing that doesn't amount to anything, there we go. That being said, right after that, Michael killing all four guys on the truck, while they feel a bit dumb at times, it's so good. And like, ripping off the guy's face, it's something. It's great. It's just, you know, wow. You know, you're not expecting all this. The Michael shootout scene, when we do see it, it reminds me of Jason Goes to Hell, where the SWAT team comes out of nowhere and, you know, they shoot him up. There's a air support. There's grenades. It's wild. So this feels a little more grounded, but it's up there. And Loomis lives again after being pushed out that window. I actually think that might be a Halloween trend. People get pushed out windows all the time and still are fine somehow, right? The end parallel with Jamie seeming super evil like Michael and more great Donald Pleasance acting wraps up this one pretty nicely. And Rachel is a pretty good final girl replacement for Laurie, obviously. So Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. One of the best parts of this movie specifically is someone just having dynamite and throwing it down a hole only for Michael to climb out just in the nick of time and float down the river. I get it, it's a weird town mob thing and who knows what people have, but that's a little surprising. The Jamie not talking thing in this is a little bit weird, and trying to add deep mythology as the psychic link in the fifth one, and it's just as weird as when Jason Goes to Hell did it. I will say I like the sisterly bond in the newer trilogies, and the characters of Tina and Rachel's interactions with Jamie are, for me, the best parts of the movie by far. Well, that and Donald Pleasance, but he is the best part of all these movies, unless it's a tie with Jamie Lee Curtis. Those do some really weird editing, and I'm a video editor to my name is my profession, right? I don't know what the point was here. They had these dumb cop sounds. They're brutal, like clownish, like they're trying to, you know, not be subtle about the weird slapstick humor, but like, what a wild and stupid decision. It's like bum, 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 bum. It's like a cop will do something, oh, Michael's not here, they'll walk away, bum, 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 bum. It's such a stupid choice. I hate it. Like, there are a few things about this movie that I don't like, and that I just like, what's happening? As you can imagine, this idea never made it into another Halloween movie. And just like that, our stereotypical final girl is gone. At least the Michael hidden in the dark shots are still good, like Return, which stinks because, you know, if you're trying to build up a character, I guess the thought is, well, Jamie is our final girl, and this other girl who's lingering from the last movie is good, but, you know, we're going to make it clear that she's not the final girl in this to-be trilogy, and she gone. As bad as this movie is, I kind of like our teen characters. Even though they're super minor in role, they have those fun, vibrant personality camp counselor feels, just like Friday the 13th. And then eventually Jamie does start to talk, which is great, but we don't really know why. She just, you know, she's making these sounds. She talked in the fourth one. She's making sounds through most of the fifth one, and then eventually she talks. Don't know why. Just sort of happens. The amount of fake scares at the party and just the party scene overall is super extra. And this whole movie feels just kind of like pointless. Like, you know, I do always love when they have, you know, Loomis doing whatever he wants. That doesn't change, thankfully. And his craziness is on full display here, with Jamie, like him. They're both holed up in this house, kind of like the previous movie. Him just kind of chilling and chatting with Michael. It's just a bit weird in this movie. The whole take his rage away thing is just a bit too much. It's just like, we don't know where we're going. And he's a psychologist, right? He's his therapist. He should know something, but no one really knows what's going on with Michael. And in this moment, Loomis looks like a total idiot. And the end of the movie just drags on. But I do like how they only subtly show his face in the reveal to Jamie. Like, it's not a terrible movie. It just feels like it's not super useful, and it takes ages to get the growth from Jamie, I guess. And, most annoyingly, a cliffhanger tease that never really gets explained remotely besides a few shots of a man in a black suit outfit and spurs. And apparently, when they made this movie, they didn't know who he was. Some of the elements that were included in here, they didn't know the answers to. Like, we'd get a connective tissue to the sixth one, but 5 just feels like a hodgepodge assortment of things. It's not all bad, but it's definitely weaker. It's weak sauce, that's for sure. Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers, the sixth one. Before I get into this, I am watching the unrated producer's cut. It took a while to find a reasonably priced version, but once I did, I got the whole set, except for 3, because that is barely a Halloween film, and the Rob Zombie ones, which you'll eventually hear why I dislike those so much. So in short, what's the difference, right? The producer's cut has more Loomis, always a plus, and just more overall coherence in the story. The theatrical cut has less cult stuff in general, which some people like that. I was super confused watching the original cut, kind of like when I watched Dawn of Justice the first time, and watching that, the extra cuts just make that much more sense and coherence, and that same is true with this for me. So most would agree, right, the Jamie trilogy is one of the weaker parts of the franchise. It has the very bad Part 5, and while 6 isn't terrible, it has so much added mythology and cult stuff. And that starts with Jamie giving birth to a baby, seemingly with Michael Myers, and the cult and the Man in Black exist here too. There's only so much Loomis in here since actor Donald Pleasance did die before the reshoots took place, but I love seeing as much of him as possible, and they explain why he does not have all those burns anymore. Like, just having that simple explanation to the audience, not having to make assumptions or logic jump, it's important. We also get a super creepy Paul Rudd who plays Tommy Doyle, the kid from 1 and 2. The biggest difference for me between these two things is these two film versions is this, which is nice. They don't immediately kill off Jamie in this version, which makes sense to me. Like, she was at one point seemingly the main character final girl. Put some respect on her name. Like, they kill her eventually, but at least let her be in it a little bit more. So we have a different Strode family to focus on here, and it's just a bit too much to add. Now we have another new kid who's hearing the voices of kill, kill, kill. And if Jamie's arc only marginally worked, having Danny once and then never again, it just doesn't do anything. We're introduced to so many new characters in 6, and they obviously are gone after this since most diverging storylines are including 1 and 2 and skipping everything else. So this is the end of 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, and there's nothing to build on. I like Paul Rudd, let's be real, I love Paul Rudd, but man, is he super weird in this movie. I really wonder how they're going to make him in Halloween Kills, not Paul Rudd, but this character, because they couldn't get Paul Rudd to reprise this role. He's too busy with Ghostbusters. So we talked about this in some of the later Friday the 13th ones. Moms are nice and caring, but don't make it out alive. Dads are abusive, physically or emotionally, sometimes both, and die in a super visceral way that normally feels appropriate to the crimes they had made previously. I have to say, one of the better parts here is the scares and ultimate death of the mom, Deborah, just because it feels like they make the stalking really good. Sometimes you see him, sometimes you don't, and when it finally happens, it's too late. It's probably the most tense I felt watching the entire thing, but sometimes. And once again, I chose the version that has more mythology because I want cohesion in my story, but all of this mythology is just a little bit, like, okay, more, great. I get you have to reinvent things. This franchise is no stranger to trying to reinvent things, but doing it this late is just too much for me. You know what's not too much? When they finally kill off that jerk dad, John. Apparently, this is one of those scenes where the theatrical cut is actually better. Since John gets more than electrocuted, his head literally blows off. And when you have that character that you want to hate, which they introduced later in the Friday the 13th, and, and this for sure is one of those moments, you like to see them really get it. And in this instance, you would have liked to see the whole added scene of the head blowing up just because he was a jerk. let his head blow up, right? I like this plot point they have sprinkled in here, though, of bringing Halloween back to the town, not fearing the holiday anymore and celebrating it. It's kind of a cool, unique angle, and sadly, I wish it was more of a part of the movie, but it feels like it's so barely touched on. Like, it kind of reminds me, and this is bad, of the worst Friday the 13th Freddy vs. Jason, where, the town's trying to hide away the name of Freddy because if they forget about him, then he won't have power, but if they remember him, he'll be able to do all his dream killing, right? Well, I kind of like the idea of Halloween being a thing that Michael has a attachment to, but that's really barely a thing in here. I feel like it could have been a more interesting angle compared to all the cult stuff in mythology. One thing, especially with Tommy Doyle here, is there's some rear view window vibes we get with him being kind of the creepy loner who's watching, but he's not like a bad guy. He's just a little creepy and misunderstood. And we get that vibe. And anytime we get even a slight nod to anything Hitchcockian, it's a good time. But at the end, the whole focus on runes and the reveal of who the Man in Black is, it's all a bit rushed. And worst part of this is the ending, especially compared to the theatrical cut. It just kind of ends. Dr. Loomis, the tattoo on the old Man in Black, and he died, and Jason is wearing his costume, so they swapped outfits, and then Loomis has a tattoo on his wrist. I think the original ending, it makes it seem like he goes off to finish Jason, and then it's vague and ambiguous, and he screams. But I don't know. The end's pretty all over the place. But with this franchise, with so many rebooted timelines, you kind of have to take things with a grain of salt. That's my stance on it. Halloween H20, 20 years later. I think when I first saw this title, before I was even into it, I was like, what does water have to do with it? What does H2 have to do with anything? It's not that. It's a 20-year anniversary. 20 years later, all this connected stuff they made into the title. Whenever a movie, or specifically a Halloween movie, has Sandman by the Pointer Sisters, I'm in. What a way to show the movie going back to its roots. Having a subtle Friday the 13th nod with a hockey mask as part of a jump scare, beautiful. And we get super young Joseph Gordon-Levitt. He's a total scrub teen in this, but for a short time as he's in there, he makes an impression, and I'm all about it. Friday the 13th, they got some Kevin Bacon. He's in it a little longer. Halloween, they got young Joseph Gordon-Levitt. And I guess you could say Paul Rudd too. It's a fun connective circle we have of actors and things, right? We also have the return of Marion Chambers, the nurse from the first two movies, and it just feels like we are back to where we belong for this franchise. We're in a safe, comfortable place now. And I did like Jamie for a time, but then we went all over the place with 5 and 6. I'm not saying 4, 5, and 6 are all bad. I quite like 4. It just feels like things went off the rails a little bit as they went, and they couldn't really wrap up that trilogy. It feels like from the beginning, the scares and kills are back and better than ever before. Michael is his own man again, not controlled by some random cult with runes or whatever was going on in the 6th one. And most importantly, Jamie Lee Curtis, Scream Queen extraordinaire, aka Laurie Strode, is back. This franchise timeline goes Halloween 1, 2, H20, and Resurrection. They say she faked her death, unlike killing her off-screen in the original timeline, because she was not asked to participate and she did not want to be there at the time. Some combo of all these facts made this happen. So Laurie is hiding under a different name, and she has a son from a now failed marriage. We never meet the husband. That's fine. You don't really need to. She also has some of those same sees Michael even when he isn't there PTSD things, not unlike Tommy Jarvis in one of the worst Halloweens in Halloween 5. One of the absolute worst ones for many reasons, right? I also like in this movie, the first one, we get this feel that Michael is smart enough to function and clearly drive a car. Maybe he's smarter than Jay. Let's be real. He's smarter than Jason. That's a fact. They both kill creatively and have fun with it, but Jason does not drive cars, and there's no repeated history of him doing this seemingly. Also, LL Cool J is in this, and that's amazing as is. He's a security guard who's writing love novels. I'm pretty sure I like him more in this than his other scary movies, Deep Blue Sea, which is also good and has Thomas Jane, but I like him just a little more in this. I don't know, maybe it's because shark movies, they're all kind of the same to me. Although eventually I have to watch all those Jaws movies. There's way more than I thought existed. I don't know why it's so odd to me. So Jason kills a bunch, sometimes animals, but never kids. The assumption is he has sympathy for kids. That's especially shown in part 6 when there's a full counselor camp run with a ton of kids. Just doesn't do it. Michael does not kill kids, even though he has a clear chance to early on here. Instead just steals a car. The thought was he does not kill kids either, but he clearly does in the 2018 remake, and his goal at times is to kill a kid and her friend with Jamie Jamie in 4 and 5. Unrelated, since this is much more of a coping mechanism than a joke, but Jamie Lee's character in Scream Queen is seemingly an endless well of alcoholism. It's just tough to compare those two and not see the same thing. Apparently, Ryan Murphy, as I said, is working on bringing Scream Queens Season 3 back after being canceled way in 2017. If you have not watched it yet, you really should. The first 2 seasons are on Hulu, and there are some phenomenal things. You got a Jonas Brother. You got Taylor Lautner. You have, if you like American Horror Story, you have a ton of your Scream Queens girls are in American Horror Story. You have John Stamos. It's truly a magical thing. And Keke Palmer, who we obviously like. Mr. Sandman being used not once, but twice in this movie. You know, best movie in the franchise, right? I mean, let's not get too crazy. I don't want to spoil anything. And maybe that's not true. All jokes aside, the more they use Mr. Sandman, the better it is. Just throwing it out there. I also like that even though Laurie is clearly paranoid here, it's kind of warranted because, you know, Michael only finds them because, you know, they're in town and they make this big commotion. But you could say that could be Laurie's fault and not her son's fault because she was out too. I kind of like there's a literary parallel that they have discussing fear in the classroom where Jamie Lee Curtis is a teacher and its paralyzing nature with Frankenstein. It kind of feels like one of those classroom scenes in the Scream movies or TV shows. They really do have fun with jump scares here, especially with if it's Michael or someone else. And normally it's someone else, but they get you with good jump scares, I feel like. Also, I like not in universe, but shared slasher rapport. You know, they're watching the first Scream in this movie, and I love that, you know, with the first Scream, they're watching the first Halloween. So it's a little homage to each other, right? I like when horror movies dive into trauma, as you've probably heard in my Friday the 13th episode, and its effect on those who survive these things. And Jamie Lee Curtis was long missing from this franchise and her ability to act in this role, be this character to seeing how she's coped with something 20 years ago, but how it's still impacting her. And when we do get to the eventual killing that we're expecting, the private boarding school is a pretty fun setting. It's unique slasher hunting ground. Yes, there are very few kills in this one, only 7 by my count. But even the first one in the franchise feels like it lacks that body count, but those are easily some of the best in the franchise. More kills does not always lead to a better movie. These are intrinsic properties. Also got some Scream Season 3 vibes with the dumbwaiter stuff. Just in general, the scares and kills that we do have are really good here. And the movie just has tense action on a smaller scale. And almost because they're not locked into this boarding school, because everything's a little contained, it feels a little more unnerving, kind of like Jason X at times. Surprisingly, a ton of people actually make it out alive in this movie. Jamie Lee, LL Cool J, her son, and his girlfriend. I really do like this version of Laurie. She's more adept, but not like a certified warrior. She has a gun. She uses a trope of pretending to hide in the closet where she first hid from Michael in the first movie, but then knocks him out to get away. But she does have to confront him, and that is such growth from her character, and the parallels of that Frankenstein story of her confronting her fears are manifested, you know, in this monster of Michael. Also, Michael's mad strong in these 2 movies, this and the following one. Like, he must do mad pull-ups to hang out and just wait for Laurie just to stealthily drop down on her. Like, what is it with serial killers and being swole AF? They're all at Planet Fitness just in a little gym workout group together, I guess. Honestly, this confrontation and chase scene is very well shot and choreographed and feels right at home with the real roots of the series. So the end is probably the most controversial, mostly because of the following film. The movie evolves from here. Jamie takes his body, learning from the past that he's not dead unless she really kills him. Like, chopping his head off, and part of this feels like it's a great arc for her in the movie. Unfortunately, this is undone in the next movie, saying she killed some random guy who Michael dressed up as him and left, leaving her to kill some random guy. We don't find that out until the sequel, which is a true mixed bag. So Halloween Resurrection. I'll call this the Jason X of the franchise. Barely relating to anything else going on in the franchise. Not the most amazing by any stretch of the imagination, but it's so fun and dumb. It's just an enjoyable romp. While Jamie Lee Curtis is on the cover of the movie and the DVD case, she is not the main character here. We see what Michael did in the previous film to fake his appearance and get Jamie Lee institutionalized. We do see her a bit here, and while we are led to believe that she is suicidal and insane, she's really just biding her time and preparing to ambush Michael when he inevitably comes for her. I don't necessarily like when we have these moments of recapping films, as the Friday the 13th films did a ton, but thankfully, this is much quicker, and we do get some new footage in this flashback to at least make it not too repetitive and feel like it's telling a story that we hadn't seen yet, because we hadn't seen that part. It's the one-arm pull-ups for me, as Michael clearly has this upper body strength thing locked down. Also, when we do find, there's a head in the dryer making sounds, like that's what I expected from part 6 when we had this dryer that was seemingly bumping around and it turned out just bloody sheets. Just random sheets making these bang noises. Like, yeah, right. The only time a dryer makes those sounds is when I'm drying any of my down stuff and I put a bunch of tennis balls in to fix and balance out the down. Sheets don't make that sound no matter what state they're in. Just a fact. Just a laundry fact for all y'all. Besides, how silly is it for Michael to just walk through a door? I know we said in the second one he walked through glass. He just walks through, not the door, like the door that's locked and the wall parts around it. Just walks right through. Like, what's going on? The chase scene in the institution is very good. Of course, you have to love that Jamie Lee Curtis leads him to the roof only to have him trapped by her amazing mechanical rope thing. Unfortunately, her apprehension about killing him mistakenly the last time leads to her sad and semi-cheap death of being stabbed and thrown off a roof. I was really expecting her to be back in the end to finish him off. Hopefully the trees breaking her fall and keeping her alive. Like, it felt like there was a lot of trees with a lot of branches that could have slowed her fall. I really thought that was on purpose for her being alive, but clearly not. Now she's died for a second time in this franchise. Nope. I will say, Michael framing the serial killer obsessed guy before leaving, that's a nice touch. And keeping the thought and line that he's smart, he's just portrayed really poorly in 4 to 6 at times. They really did Psycho, Scream, Godzilla, and G.I. Joe retaliation us here by killing our main character early off. But this hurts more because we'd seen her be the main character in 3 other movies prior. They better not do this to us in the new trilogy. So quickly we realize we have a ton of no relation to anything prior characters. We have 6 random college students. One is clearly meant to be the final girl. No real surprise there. Apparently, they were trying to get Jamie Lloyd, played by Halloween 4 and 5's Danielle Harris, for a role here, which would have been great to see her in one of those teen roles. The role kind of feels like it would be written for her, honestly, and the ghost flashbacks of seeing him would make more sense than just some random team seeing a vision of him. Fun fact, Danielle Harris actually portrayed Annie Brackett, a friend of Laurie Strode, in the Rob Zombie reboots. So how about that, being different actors in different Halloween movies? The most exciting thing in this movie is kung fu, film-loving Busta Rhymes, and Tyra Banks is pretty fun in this too. So the plot is a bunch of teens are going to spend time in the Myers house and film it on like personal body cameras. Inevitably, things will go wrong and people are going to get it, like the worst season of AHS, aka Roanoke, obviously. I do always like film things behind the scene things. As much as Scream 3 has some weird supernatural things, I like the film set parts. Play around with cameras and straight up murder a TV production guy with a tripod. Pretty sensational. And of course it's not seen until the very end before the killer is gone. It just looks like a nice camera angle. While this premise is super dumb, no question, there's something kind of fun about it being a reality computer live stream, which definitely was barely a thing with live streaming become a mainstay in 2010. And it's fun seeing it sometimes from the perspective of fans watching it and trying to help out our reluctant final girl. And I like that a party also just wants to watch some live scary stream thing instead of actually party. The reaction cutaways make me enjoy the movie more than I probably should. There are a ton of kills here, and while the teens are paramount to underdeveloped blood sacks, there are quirky enough stereotypes to be fun. Having Michael Myers meet dressed up as Michael Myers Busta Rhymes and getting berated and listening, not immediately killing to go kill Tyra. It's I don't know why they did it, but it's fun. And no one knows why Michael did it. He probably in his mind said, okay, I'll do that and I'll come back for you afterwards, right? The cooking guy is really the one I probably super remember with his whole stance on bad diet makes you a killer. And while the death scenes are pretty fun here, the fight with Chef Guy having a few kitchen knives is pretty fun, but nothing compares to Busta Rhymes, and you knew it was being set up for this, kung fu fighting Michael Myers. You heard me right. I could not make this up. And there's some chainsaw fun, a first for this franchise, and at some point there's fire and things are blowing up. Busta Rhymes saying trick or treat or burn motherfucker and electrocuting Michael's dick and saying happy fucking Halloween before leaving. I mean, damn. Writing bliss. And how crazy is the neck muscles on Michael and Jason, where both get hung and are totally fine? The one question I have, however, is how trusting that everyone is the serial killer, like that it's Michael and not Busta Rhymes, because you saw him dressed up in it and you saw people die. How are they so quickly forgiving of Busta Rhymes' character? Not the most important, but had to point it out. Thank goodness Busta Rhymes makes it out of this movie. One more quote. Michael Myers is the killer shark in baggy-ass overalls who gets his kicks from killing everyone and everything he comes across. Okay, really last one. Last one, I promise. Looking a little crispy over there, Mikey, like some chicken fried motherfucker. Literary gold. Sadly, Busta Rhymes probably is not going to be in the latest reboot trilogy, which is a true travesty. Okay, folks, here's where things get kind of dark, and not as in dark and menacing. Like dark as in not good. Bad. Bad movies. Halloween 2007, the Rob Zombie remake. There's some interesting family life things that are good to see, but I think I said this in a different movie, in the 2009 version of Friday the 13th. They really draw out these weird backwater southern stereotypes to make everything feel like he has a worse childhood. I like seeing the family background. It's a little drawn out. This is a theme I think I saw early, but felt like it was both of these just Rob Zombie movies. They're pretty over-the-top violent, not always bad, but not always good. I know Malcolm McDowell mostly for his DC animated voiceover work, but seeing him as a disheveled Dr. Loomis is jarring for both the actor and the character. Like, it's a discrediting to everything Donald Pleasance did. He's looking like a dirty hippie, and it hurts. It feels like sacrilegious to the franchise, especially for how important Donald Pleasance is. I like seeing Walking Dead alum Lou Temple, and it's fun. You know, he's a terrible character, but it's just fun seeing actors you know from other things sometimes. Best part is probably a fun, kind-hearted Danny Trejo. He might be the best part of the first movie. Him dying is the point where the movie dropped hard for me. I mean, look, Danny Trejo is amazing. He's Machete in the Spy Kids movies. He's in Def Jam Fight for New York. He's great in pretty much everything he's in. You know, you figure there's this rapport that he and Michael built up, but nope. He gone. What a shame. What a tragedy. It takes a little bit of getting to seeing the Strode folks, and modern day new Laurie is not bad, but it just feels like she's some random girl and not actually Laurie. There's only one true Laurie, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis. Not that she's bad, it's just like, you know, Laurie felt like, you know, she wasn't necessarily your clean all-American girl, but for the most part she was. I think she tried weed and didn't like it. But like, this girl just feels like another trashy teen compared to every trashy teen that you would kill in a Friday the 13th movie. There's no reason to think Laurie's anything special or different. They do have the Mr. Sandman theme back, which is amazing, but that's not going to save this movie. Come on, guys. The dialogue in this is horrendous, and it feels like, maybe no surprise, Rob Zombie and whoever he had on this movie, they can't write teen girls for crap. Like, it just feels like all super stereotypical and just garbage. I don't really know what happened here. It's just bad. There's some fun callbacks to the first movie with, you know, the ghost costume with glasses. And also this movie does one of my least favorite things, which is like part of the Cloverfield stuff, is the handheld shaky cam. And it's very prevalent in the last third. And I just don't know what happened with this movie. It's bad. It's just bad. So let's look at the next one, Halloween 2. I have to preface it with the year again, 2009, the Rob Zombie one. There are some gross necrophiliac comments, swear words and gore for the sake of being edgy. It's just cool. We're cool and edgy, and that's what we do. We're an edgy movie where we're going to kill people, and you're going to see nudity, and you're going to see gore, and everyone's going to swear in like 24/7. It's trying so hard. Like, don't be such a tryhard. I will say there's one kind of neat thing that I remember. There's a pale white horse ghost mention reference. It's cool in theory. It's just a little on the nose, and it looks bad. Like, the special effects look rough. Like I said, it's just, this movie tries so hard to be cool. And the dream sequence where it's Laurie and she's hiding from Michael and it's raining and dark, it took forever, and I was pissed when they did the Dallas if it was all a dream shtick. I like the therapy scenes because I think dealing with trauma is interesting to me. It seems so positive and portraying that it's good in media, which is a nice thing. The best actor in these movies is Loomis, I guess, but they made his role so useless. He becomes like a media darling, and he's just, you know, bought into the fame and doesn't really do anything. In the first, at least, there's some really interesting development scenes with, you see Michael as a kid in therapy, and, you know, Loomis is a part of helping him, and, you know, his love for his mom is there, and there's these just interesting things, but all that's out the window, and he's useless. Also, in this movie, why does Michael grunt like all the time? It's like in Friday the 13th, Jason goes to hell when he's getting shot. He's just like, like they never make sounds before this. That's the whole thing, is silent and imposing killers. And for some random times in this movie and that franchise, they just, nope, he makes grunting sounds now. How about Chris Hardwick pre-Walking Dead after shows and a great Weird Al Yankovic talk show cameo? Like, it's fun. They're making fun of Loomis. OG Loomis, A, wouldn't have been on that show. B, wouldn't have taken all. C, he'd be popping off rounds. Like, just throwing it out there. They really did a discredit to the Loomis that I remember from the first movies. There's one interesting thing that I remember. It's the sheriff's daughter death montage, kind of remembering her as a kid. That ain't bad with some visual storytelling. And as I said, I really think they didn't do a lot with Sheriff Brackett and his daughter, who was obviously important in the first one, but it would have been nice to see more of that, like, attention to detail and nice, interesting storytelling for the rest of the two movies. Like, they're just bad. Also, when we do finally get to see the face of Michael, which we should never be seeing his face, but in this movie we do, he's like a dirty, fat Thor, and, the mystery and the imagination is gone. And, like, there's parts through the whole movie where he has chunks of his mask taken out. We don't need to see it. Why would you want to see who your masked serial killer is? He's just some guy. It's not, it's like Scooby-Doo. The ghosts, they pull it off. Oh, Mr. Jenkins. Like, no one cares who Mr. Jenkins is in this franchise. Just throwing it out there. Also, killing for his mom is kind of what they try to make his why he does what he does. That's a Friday the 13th thing. Stop it, Rob Zombie. Look, Friday the 13th was a knockoff on Halloween. We know that. But you can't go back and knock off the knockoff, especially in a remake. What are you thinking? There are some great covers of music, right? The Love Hurts, it's kind of a somber, almost like a bedtime lullaby type song. And it's great at the end. Some of the music was pretty good in these movies. Some. However, the majority of the music in these movies was dreadful screamo music, which is the worst, the equivalent of musical garbage. Something went wrong when they made these. Now that we're done with that, you want to see my Renegade? Bum, 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 bum. No. Now that we're done with that, Halloween 2018. Yes, it's the third movie titled Halloween. But don't worry, there are good things to talk about here. So the movie to start is the most recent of these slasher movies. And honestly, Halloween 2018 is the most successful critically and financially since probably Scream. So the timelines go 1 to 2 and 4 to 6. 1 to 2, 7 to 8. This one goes 1 to 11, and eventually, presumably, 12 and 13. So while it stinks that it's not including 2, they did this purely to erase the family connection between Michael Myers and Laurie Strode, which was brought up in the second movie, which I keep forgetting for some reason. So off the bat, this movie looks amazing, and it's scary and unnerving. It also feels relevant, grounded, and modern, something that the Rob Zombie movies could never do. There's a true crime fascination, which kicks off the whole thing of podcasting. Heck, you're listening to one right now. Spooky. Ooh. So Laurie, back at it again, alive for the third time. Last time she was dealing with trauma and still suffering from PTSD. This version is a certified badass who has been training for the day where Michael comes back, like for years and years and years. And she trained her daughter to do the same thing, which maybe not the best parenting. For her, it's not if, but when. Her life has been put on hold, 2 failed marriages. Yes, you could try to connect the ties to H2O and 2, but they're not. Like 6, we're introduced to a new family, but this time they are blood relatives, and Laurie is alive and interacts with them. It's not just throwing us a new random family. There's a connected tissue vehicle to introduce them. And I like this family dynamic. Judy Greer as a daughter of Laurie Strode, her husband Toby Huss, and fairly newcomer Andy Matichak as Laurie's granddaughter. While Laurie has no relationship with her family, she tries to have some with her granddaughter Allison. She lost her daughter out of her care at age 12 because she was pretty much raising her to be a military mind and be ready for the day that Michael comes for both of them, that she will have her and her daughter to take on whenever the boogeyman comes out to get them. And I loved seeing badass Laurie, with her shooting range set up in her house, and it really kind of tells you who this version of Laurie is that we're seeing this many years after the first movie happened. Also, while Donald Pleasance has been dead for a while, it's nice to give him some relation in this world, both in voiceover from previous repurposed audio and some interesting court drawings with the body of Annie as like an autopsy. And it's just good attention to detail and keeping him part of the narrative. Even though he will most likely not be a part of the rest of the franchise, it was good to include him in this story in some capacity, thankfully. I feel like this film, I feel like this film version of Laurie is super capable. I appreciate the way it conveys her character and the emotional toll it's taken on her. The best Friday the 13th films tackle trauma in a strong, unique way. But other than Tommy Jarvis, they have nothing on this film of how important these characters of Laurie and Loomis are. The flashbacks of her as a kid, learning how to prepare. And I like how you have, not just, it's generational, right? And I like how Judy Greer, it's kind of a generational trauma. The flashbacks of her as a kid, learning how to prepare, and the toll of this paranoia and trauma has taken on her. Seeing this family deal with trauma in different ways, it really adds a layered approach and makes the cast of characters fully realize and hopefully super developed once we wrap up the trilogy. Also, this is the first time we see either Michael or Jason actually kill a kid. It's not too gruesome, thankfully. I'm just surprised it's a thing, since most franchises try to avoid killing kids visually on camera for obvious reason. But it does kind of set this tone for anything can happen this time around. We do have a flashback to the first film, but it honestly doesn't bug me that much here. And this scene is why it gives a motivation. Michael does eventually kill off the two podcasters. And it's how he gets the iconic mask back after all this. He really is brutally killing in this film, and he has some random teeth from one guy he killed elsewhere. And this was probably the hallmark of the trailer when it came out. Also, point here for another negative to the zombie films. Like, we see his face, but we never really get a good look at it, which is on par for the rest of the franchise, except for those two rubbish film. Random fun fact, Nick Castle is one of the two actors who plays the Shape, aka Michael, in this movie, and he was in it in 1978, and he's reprising his role for the entirety of this latest trilogy. Also, I love that we do at least have one scene with a babysitter to go back to the OG roots. And even these super background characters of Vicky, Julian, and Dave make this scene so much fun. It feels less like stereotypes and more like dumb kids or real parents. Everyone feels super realized, even if they're not developed with tons of backstory. So I think it's done more tastefully here. I don't love forcing backstory. Deputy Frank Hawkins is great, but I really thought he was Sheriff Brackett from the first movie for a time. And it turns out he was the guy who arrested Michael, but obviously he was just introduced in this movie since the retcon. But I like him in this, and he has a strong role. Speaking of roles, I didn't even really touch on it yet, but the movie says the new Loomis is Dr. Sartain, played by Haylock Bilgener, and the doctor parts are good and all, but I really do like the twist here. The deputy has Michael at his mercy right up until he's taken out by Sartain and his pocket scalpel, and he's quickly killed off, however, by Michael. So Sartain wants to use and study Michael more and more and more, and he gets got, and quickly the Loomis archetype is killed off as he is. Based on movie logic, scary movie logic, you would expect the cheating boyfriend to not make it out through this movie, but apparently he's back in the sequel, and you gotta imagine that justice will come back to bite him eventually. And actually, there's a deleted scene in this where he is drunk and he's talking to cops, and eventually he gets arrested, and that's how our lead Allison is with her friend, where her friend tries to kiss her, and then she leaves and he gets killed. But there's just those few little extra scenes in the extended cut, well, not extended cut, in the deleted scenes that would have been nice in the movie. I think almost all of those scenes fill in a few gaps that would have been nice to see and add maybe 10-15 minutes to the runtime. That's fine with me. I really haven't felt this passionate about deleted scenes until probably last time, maybe Revenge of the Sith. I think there were some really good deleted scenes in that would have once again added some nice context to the movie. So we actually see the dad die in this, which is not surprising for the genre, but he actually wasn't a bad person, which is pretty unique, but they weren't going to keep him around. Let's be real. This is about the Strode woman. Not that he is bad, but the story's not about him. It's about the generation of Strode women, so it makes sense to get rid of him. But actually right before that, there's a really good scene with one of the cops has his head chopped off with the flashlight stuck into it, so it kind of looks like a jack-o'-lantern. Just something special and festive, right? Gets you in the festive mood. The final confrontation is an amazing display of Laurie clearing out rooms and locking them off with military precision. I do like when they had Laurie fall, like her first on-screen death, and they did this thing where she disappears, which is what all the characters do normally to the slasher villain, right? The protagonist sees his character fall, they turn away, they look back, they're gone. That's what happens. Laurie does that to Michael in this, which is a fun little reversal, right? And when all three Strode women come back is when I think the stress really hits, when they're all together. You have the daughter in the woods trying to figure out where everyone is. We were unaccounted for with Jamie Lee Curtis, and Judy Greer's character is in the like panic room under the center island. It's a little stressful because everyone's here and you don't know who has the upper hand. But one final surprise is in store as the hiding place turns out to be a final trap to catch and burn Michael and finally kill him. Or do they? Bum, bum, bum. But seeing all the, training at Laurie and her daughter and even Allison at the end all work together to take out Jason. I did not know this before, but there's actually a post-credit scene with him breathing, hinting at more to come. It's very brief, but they do have it. So let's look at the future of the franchise. So before I talk about the future, just remember, if you have it on a digital copy with menus, not just the movie, the deleted scenes are pretty good on this one. Highly recommend the view. So future of the franchise. Halloween Kills coming out in 2021. They're casting Sheriff Brackett, who is Charles Cypher, who played him in Halloween 1 and 2. New casting of Tommy Doyle in Halloween 1, 2, 4, and 6. The character existed, most famously portrayed by Paul Rudd in 6. They try to get him back, but like we said, Ghostbusters reboot. They're going to put Anthony Michael Hall in the role instead, and he is from The Breakfast Club. Maybe you've seen it. Kyle Richards, the original Lindsay from the first movie, is also back at it again. This movie is jam-packed with continuations from the first movie, and I'm all about it. They're bringing things back home into the family. Also bringing back Marion Chambers from 1, 2, and H20, played by the original actress Nancy Stevens, who's mostly known for her time with this franchise. Also, there's a short teaser trailer out. All we really know is it picks up immediately where the last one left off. I always like that. We talked about it with Halloween 1 and 2. It's kind of what The Force Awakens did with The Last Jedi. And we see paramedics driving off in the direction of the fire and Michael, and we see the Strode girls upset with this development as they leave the scene, and that's all we really get. And not much to note about the third film in this trilogy. Halloween Ends is what it's called. Who knows if it's the end? We've talked about how many Friday the 13th part 1s there are, and Halloween Ends is seemingly coming out in 2022. So let's rank these bad boys. Here we go. Let's get right into it. We haven't done a ranking in a little bit. Here it is. Number 11, Halloween 3. I really, really do not like Halloween 3. It's barely a Halloween film. It's about witches and masks and robots. Garbage. At number 10, we're putting Halloween 2, 2009, Rob Zombie. The first Rob Zombie film had a few redeeming qualities. The second one takes those redeeming qualities, which is mostly the semi-interesting character development of young Michael, of Loomis at times, even though his appearance is awful, and just doesn't do anything with it. It's just gory, it's crass, it's profane, it's stupid. Garbage. Number 9, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers. And it was tough between Halloween 5 or Halloween 2007 Rob Zombie for the placement. But here's my defense, right? Revenge of Michael Myers has the stupid cop, womp, 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 womp sound effects. It starts to bring in annoying mythology, and I know there's more mythology later, but putting it out there, it just doesn't do anything with Jamie, and it just is some garbage scenes. I don't like it at all. Number 8, we will put Halloween 2007 Rob Zombie remake, and yes, there's some lovely things development wise that would have been nice in the original franchise, like delving into Michael as a kid, but there's so much gritty garbage and gore and profanity, just like the second one. Had to put it at number 8. None of these movies I think are particularly good. I'd probably watch 5 before I watched the Rob Zombie movie from 2007, but I have to commend them for the somewhat positive things they did with that first movie. I wouldn't watch it again, but I appreciate it for what it did. Another tough choice one between 7 and 6. We have Halloween Resurrection and The Curse of Michael Myers. I said, oh man, this might be another last minute change, because as much as, no, I'm not changing it. I don't like the fact that we have Jamie Lee for a little bit and she's gone. Halloween Resurrection looks good, and I think it's hilarious to have Busta Rhymes in there. Oh man. You know what? I am going to change it. At number 7, we're going to put The Curse of Michael Myers. And number 6, we're going to put Resurrection. For the same reason that we did last time. Because here's my take. I don't like how we lose Laurie super early. There's no relation to the franchise in Resurrection. But The Curse of Michael Myers does take a pretty strong departure. And as much as I love original Loomis, the cult stuff takes a huge place on the front burner, and gone are some of the things I would like in the back burner. So even though Resurrection is super dumb, and I did this with Jason X, so it should be no surprise really at this point, that I think you have to put Curse of Michael Myers at 7 and Resurrection at 6. I don't think either one is amazing for obvious reasons. I think they both have somewhat redeeming qualities at times, but if I had to say which one I'd rather watch, it'd probably be Resurrection, just because it's a little more fun and doesn't delve so much into cult things that need to reference Halloween 5, which I really don't like. Here's where they get good, don't worry. At number 5, we're going to put Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, which is a movie I do enjoy. It's not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination. Nothing in the top 5 is a bad movie. Jamie is okay. You know, it's tough with the first movie without Laurie, and I think that's honestly part of the issue, is Laurie is the franchise. And as much as we do get more Loomis and Donald Pleasance here, and I love him, he's also in some of the other ones on this list. So, you know, 4's good. It's tough to not have the Scream Queen and try to replace her. Just what it is. Number 4, we're going to go Halloween 2, 1981. The doctor setting is okay. The picking up right after the first one's good. I just, you know, I felt like I cared more for the characters in the first movie, as few as we really met, versus the second one with the hospital. It just doesn't really matter as much. And obviously Loomis is amazing in this one. It's probably the second best movie he's in. You can guess which one's the first, probably. It's good. Halloween 2 is very good. It just feels like at times the doctor setting and even the chase at the end is a little silly. But it's a very good movie. Highly recommend it. Would absolutely watch it again, right? At number 3, we're going to put H20, 20 years later, the first of the reboot versions. And this one's great. The setting's awesome. We get Jamie Lee Curtis back. It looks really good. LL Cool J is great. The kills are not in quantity, but they're very much in quality. It's just a good, unique, fun movie. And there's some interesting plays it takes on trauma, which seemingly is something I'm really interested in my slasher movies. Number 2, it's Halloween, but which one? Is it the one from 1978 or the one from 2018? Well, I thought long and hard about it. I really like 2018, but at this moment, unlike with Friday the 13th, I have to give the OG spot the number 1 spot. So number 2 is Halloween 2018, and it's great. I was super interested in this movie, especially my first time. I watched them all in bulk and then rented this on Redbox, and it was great. Like, the kills are good, the modern look of H2O is definitely here as well, and unlike Resurrection, it's not a bad movie. It's a good movie. The scares are great, the generational play on trauma is good, all the dialogue feels real, and they're coming back to the roots, and obviously I'm very excited for the future. But you have to give it, Halloween 1, 1978 is the best movie in the franchise, and the atmosphere is so well done. It's so different and unique. The POV stuff in the beginning is awesome. Laurie's great as our unassuming final girl. It's just so well done. And there's a reason that even with all these divergent tangents of storylines, they're always going to go back to the first one as some relation. Do I like 2 and think it should be included as well? Sure. But I'm fine with Halloween 1, 1978, Halloween 2018, and going on from there. So my final verdict. What is the better 80s slasher franchise? So we dived into both Friday the 13th and Halloween. So here's what I have to say. I saw Friday the 13th first, being a camp counselor for a time, and with the video game, something about it just enticed me. So I was hooked and bought the whole set, minus Freddy vs. Jason, obviously. Eventually, I wanted to see the other side of the coin and realized I could enjoy Halloween too. So with Halloween, you have some amazing recurring characters beside our killer, Dr. Loomis, Laurie Strode, and they feel like there's some real bonds with this core of characters that I feel, for the most part. Michael's pretty much always menacing, minus some of the dumb cult angles. And you do have to take some liberties knowing that it's not a continual story. There are 3 diverging storylines off our main movie alone, plus a really bad reboot one and a really random unrelated film in the franchise. But you have to look at it as a whole body of work. The theme song is amazing, and they use Mr. Sandman by the Pointer Sisters. Also, the nice thing about this franchise is there's a really bright future ahead with a really strong part 1 in a new trilogy by the folks at Blumhouse. Friday the 13th, there is one that's a really bad crossover. The first movie does not have our masked killer, and they get pretty dumb as we go. Our characters are less characters, but fun tropes on stereotypes and high school cliques. Our killer is pretty dumb in these, but he seems more gleeful in his kills, not outwardly, but with how they are done. There has to be some creative artisticness behind him or whatever. And the kills and gore are way more prominent and sometimes zanier. Friday the 13th pretty quickly decides to not take itself super seriously. And for the most part, there is a welcome, fun departure from too menacing and serious. Yes, the mythology introduced in the 9th film is inexcusable, but Space Jason will always have a special place in my heart right next to the Sharknado franchise. And while we do not have recurring characters, our final girls for the most part are easily rootable, and the final boy trope, which we don't get to see a lot in this genre with Tommy Jarvis, is quite good. The other big negative here is the future is quite in jeopardy, and this has not been touched film-wise since 2009. So my final verdict, I think critically, the Halloween films are better, especially the recent versions. The 2018 version is so much better than whatever we got with Rob Zombie, and even the 2009 one's not super strong. And they're probably considered scarier, for sure, the Halloween films. But at this moment, I still have to go with Friday the 13th, but this is important for now. Yes, it is a ripoff, and it is crass and dumb. But looking at it, the best parts. Part 2, Part 6, beautiful films that are either super visually exciting or taking a really unique stance on trauma and psychology. And some of those stereotype characters are really fun. And some of the zany spin-offs like Space and Knockoff Carrie, they're fun. And this franchise is just quintessential 80s fun. But, and this is really important, but I think depending on how the modern trilogy of Halloween goes, my opinion can change. I really like my top 3 Halloween films, even I could say top 5. Those last 2 really have their moments as well. But if Halloween can pull off a string of a modern trilogy that sticks to the roots of the franchise, has the modern abilities and budget to make some really amazing scares in today's world, with all those returning cast members from the original film, plus some strong newcomers, this could be the greatest slasher franchise of all time. That is, at least until Scream 5 comes out and I can spend months binging those 5 movies and 3 seasons of the show. Alright guys, that's it for episode 13, but before I go and we take a long pause from festive, frightful films, I want to give you one more before it's too late. Earlier this week I was able to watch a newer Netflix Halloween movie, Vampires vs. the Bronx, and it was a ton of fun. I don't know if it was that much better than Hubie Halloween, but even after bumping up Hubie to a 5 out of 10 on Letterboxd, I still put Bronx at a 6 out of 10. And no, it is not just because Method Man or all the Blade references. It's just fun and a newish take on the vampire genre. I think the 3 kids had a really strong performance as well. There's some fun in-genre references, and the setting and metaphor for gentrification, while obvious, is still unique and fun. And anytime I go to see more Shea Wiggum after Boardwalk Empire, it's a better time. So guys, check me out on all our personal social media channels. Check me out. Either Nick Nack Goes to the Movies, NickNack_IC. New episodes are out every Friday. And I know I keep telling you guys this, but it would be a real treat and not a trick if you went to Apple Podcast, reviewed it with a nice review, or funny, short, whatever, but positive, 5 stars. Tell your family, tell your friends, tell everyone. Take someone's phone and say, hey, I got to download this podcast real quick, and subscribe and give it 5 stars. That would just be just peachy for me. But as always, till next time, cinephiles. Are you not entertained? I think this is gonna be the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I don't like goodbyes. Let's just call this see you later, alligator.
Nick Nack Goes to the Movies.